on News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
And we've made it to Election Day. Wake up, Virginia. You got some work to do. Let's bring it on home. If you've already voted and followed the advice of your governor, then you can still get out there and volunteer at some of these polling places and be an election watcher and things like that. Well, maybe you can't be an election watcher at this point, but you can still go out there and be some eyes and ears. Let us know what's going on. If you're out there voting, let us know what you're seeing at the polling places. We'll try to squeeze you in here at 888-630 WMAL. And when I say squeeze you in, we got a lot of other stuff going on, too. At 6:05, Laura Hanford, we've spoken to her. She championed Sage's Law that got defeated because Democrats had a majority in the Senate.
That's
so now
right.
Sage's Law should be the first bill if we do get the majority. She'll be joining us at 6:05. 7:05, Steve Knotts, chairman of the Republican Party in Fairfax County. 7:35, the aforementioned governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Glenn Youngkin, here to give his final pitch to get that vote and shock the world. 8:05, Rich Anderson, chairman of Virginia GOP. He'll tell us what he sees so far. 8:15, Ian Pryor out in Loudoun County. And then at 8:35, Jason Miyares, Attorney General of Virginia. We're kind of loaded up there.
What a day.
Let's go.
Wow.
And like I said, tomorrow we give the election results. And then Maryland, it's all about you.
That's right.
Although this is all about Maryland, too, because the issues on the table for Virginia voters right now are the exact same issues that are facing Maryland. And Maryland's going to have to deal with it. By the way, I don't know if you saw the Casa de Maryland, this activist, no borders, immigration amnesty for all group. They put out a statement. Yes, they're radical. They're absolute radicals. And they put out a statement standing by Hamas.
Hamas.
Yeah. And so where is Westmore? Where is the governor? Mr. Governor, Mr. Above it all.
He has done things with Casa.
Of course. They do events. He loves Casa de Maryland.
Wow.
And Casa de Maryland. So basically, Hamas sympathizers
Is Westmore pro-rape and killing
It seems
babies?
that way unless he comes out and says something about it. He's
That's the rules. You're supposed to distance yourself instantly.
terrorist sympathizing group. Hamas has a carte blanche in the governor's mansion of Maryland, unless Governor Westmore leave no one behind. Westmore, and that includes, I guess, Hamas sympathizers.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, we haven't forgotten you, Maryland.
This is so gross.
Unbelievable story about our friend Molly Hemingway and a group of men. I looked at this list of people who were targeted by the federal government for censorship during the 2020 election and during the COVID lockdown.
Were you on the list?
I was not.
Were you kind of annoyed?
But I can tell a little bit.
Me too.
I'm not doing it quite right, I guess. But it looked like a guest list of ours. It reminds me of... I was looking,
it's your summer barbecue.
I was looking at the list of people who were censored, and I'm like, I vividly recall starting a show and saying, coming up later in the program, and it's all those names.
Sissa probably just got on one of your Evites.
Yes.
Just copy and pasted all the names.
Congressman Jim Jordan, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, and also the chairman of the Select Committee on the Weaponization of the Government, put out this bombshell report, as he calls it, the censorship industrial complex. Hundreds of secret reports show how CISA, which you will flesh out for us in a moment, CISA, an arm of Homeland Security, worked together to censor Americans before the 2020 election, including blocking and censoring, first of all, facts. That we got to make sure we emphasize this. They censored, deleted, and sequestered and targeted people who were delivering facts on social media to the American people.
Right before the election.
But also jokes, opinions, satire, which, frankly, I'm even more offended at than facts. I'm used to a government censoring people for actually delivering what they call disinformation.
I have to say the joke is chilling.
It is.
Because totalitarians are humorless.
That's right.
It's such a sign. They cannot stand being made fun of.
Who was targeted? The first list, President Trump, of course, Senator Tom Tillis, Newt Gingrich, Governor Mike Huckabee, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Sean Hannity, Molly Hemingway. I don't know if you saw, but Mark Hemingway, Molly's husband,
so funny.
was gushing on Twitter. His first tweet was, "Hey, that's my wife. My wife has been censored." And then everything after that was as if she had just won a beauty pageant. As if she was just selected.
This is policy nerd beauty pageant, though. I mean, I'm telling you, the fact that you and I are not on that list. Every time a list comes out like this, I'm like, where am I? Oh, come on.
It's almost like his wife just got selected for Playboy's Girls of of Washington,
He's like,
D.C.
I love her so much.
She's so hot.
She's so hot.
I loved that. Candace Owens, Jack Posobiec, Benny Johnson, Tom Fitton, the Babylon Bee.
It
the
is
Babylon Bee.
It is like Heather Hunter, our producer's Rolodex.
It is. Newsmax, Michelle Malkin, Sean Davis, Paul Sperry, Chanel Rion, James O'Keefe. And the censorship was information, jokes, and political opinions. And Jim Jordan put out some examples as well. Detailed in the House panel's, and this is from the write-up over at Fox News, detailed in the House panel's 103-page staff interim report, the emails and internal communication show how the group identified as the Election Integrity Partnership.
God, that's so gross.
Worked with DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's CISA, to alert, suppress, and remove certain online speech. Now, CISA, this is this little arm that was created
in 2018 by President Trump, right? And it was cybersecurity. It was in the office of DHS, and it was headed by, you might recall this name, Chris Krebs, who...
Isn't this the guy who came out like 2 days after the election and said, this is the most secure election we've had in American history?
That's right. And he got fired by President Trump because Trump had legitimate questions about election interference. And Chris Krebs said, nope, I'm the guy in charge of cybersecurity. I'm the guy essentially in charge of making sure these voting machines and other technologies related to the election are secure. And they were. And basically shut down all conversations about this.
Yeah.
And what's so interesting is he was a part of this. He was the head of CISA.
Point. I mean, forgive me if I'm wrong, but if CISA, the guy that this Chris Krebs guy was in charge of, if CISA was silencing people who were delivering factual
about
information,
the election, that's election interference.
That in and of itself.
And he knew it.
So it by definition, it was not a fair election if people's voices were being silenced.
And he knew it.
And he was the one who was silencing them. So he had not only should he have been fired, I think he should be facing charges.
That's right. And he and his partner, there's a guy that he worked closely with, and I don't have his name in front of me. They ended up, and his partner was also a part of this. He was at CISA. They ended up opening a consultancy.
Oh, I bet.
They are, he's done quite well for himself post CISA, post getting fired. And he became a mini celebrity. I mean, Chris Krebs went on 60 Minutes. He sort of, he really had this narrative of, I worked for Trump and then I was fired because I spoke the truth to power. Like, he had this whole narrative going. Turns out he was silencing people like Molly Hemingway.
Yeah, we're going to get into that a little bit more and give you some of the details of the things that were censored. And I know what you're all saying. Fine, we know this. What are you going to do about it? And the fact that this was released by Jim Jordan's Judiciary Committee tells you that maybe there is something that they can do about it and will do about it. But it's important to get all the facts and details first. We're not Nancy Pelosi. We don't charge face first into an impeachment because we have the feels for it. We actually lay out the case and make it an inarguable fact that major repercussions need to come, and that's what Jordan's doing here. We'll give you more details on it in a moment. First, it's 5:15. WMAL, traffic and weather every 10 minutes. First on the 5s, Jamie Witten's in the Hadid Carpet Cleaning Traffic Center.
The new WMAL app has arrived. Download it today and listen anywhere in the world.
Have you seen the movie Chernobyl? It's a series that they did, right? You've seen that. Chernobyl, of course, showing how the Soviet communists dealt with this disaster at a nuclear power plant in Ukraine, by the way. And there's an opening scene when the event happens, and the people on the ground there in Chernobyl start, putting out information about what they saw and what happened. And there's a propagandist, the Soviet Politburo dude from Moscow, who makes it's a chilling statement. They say we have to get out there and stop all of the disinformation. Disinformation is this word. Misinformation is one thing. Misinformation is incorrect. You're lying, basically. Misinformation is lying. Disinformation, if you really think about it, is information that is contrary to what you want said.
It's like distortion.
Yeah. Yeah.
It helps.
And so, it was clear what he meant by we need to stop all of this disinformation is we need to stop people from telling the truth if it's contrary to what the government is saying.
That's right.
And that's what this is. When the United States government mobilized these powerful forces to stop disinformation in their mind was it's not approved by the federal government.
No.
And this is things like, the Hunter Biden laptop story, or, hey, it looks like kids aren't really affected by COVID because in Europe they've opened their schools and there's no problem.
Or, those masks aren't really working.
Yeah.
Right.
That was disinformation, and it wasn't good enough that the government could put out their own version of the facts in the news and have it win out because people didn't trust it and didn't believe it. So because of that, they had to silence and censor these individuals.
And it's really important. Matt Taibbi talked about how the mainstream press does not care about big tech censorship. And it's clear why. It just makes their life easier.
Yeah.
They can just all kind of pile on the same narrative, have the same talking points, have the same stories. And so they don't care that certain voices, because that's competition for them, really.
And of course, and it's interesting that this is all social media based and internet based. Now, we were joking about, hey, why weren't we on the list? Well, the reason we're not on the list is because what we say is happening in real time. You can hear it as we say it.
Yep.
They can't come back after the fact and delete it, right? So if we have a guest on, as we did in the weeks leading up to the election, I remember speaking with many guests who voiced grave concerns about what was going on in Pennsylvania because the rules were changed in how ballots were counted and legitimately valid during the COVID pandemic. A ballot that in the prior election would have been disqualified was allowed in Pennsylvania. And that rule was not passed by the state legislature. It was a fiat decided by the Secretary of State, who was appointed by the governor, period. And that's against the rules. That's against the law, and it should be contrary to the Electoral College because the Electoral College specifically says that the state legislature shall deem how their electors are chosen.
Yes.
And this was not the state legislature. It was contrary to the state legislature. It was the Secretary of State. That was a major piece of contention that was actually going all the way up till January 6th, was going to be contested in the House of Representatives. I had guests on that were talking about that all the time on this radio station. They couldn't censor that because it was happening live.
Yep.
But now I want you to read. This is something that was censored and targeted. It was Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, former presidential candidate. He said on Twitter, Pennsylvania Democrats are methodically changing the rules so they can steal the election. It's amazingly open, dishonest, ruthless, and will work unless the state, especially Philadelphia, is flooded with law enforcement. That was on October 23rd, 10 days before the election. That was targeted. That is exactly something that Newt or some other guest would have said on this program. But they can't do it in real time.
Right.
That's by the way, talk radio is incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Because they can't, you see it happening if they pull the plug in the middle of a conversation, and they're not going to do that. It's not, but this is insidious what they do after the fact.
It is terrifying. And it is election interference. It 100% is election interference. And the audacity of our leaders denying it, in even punishing you for saying it.
Here's one more tweet that was targeted. Mike Huckabee put out a selfie of himself with the I voted sticker. And he said,
Pre-beard.
Pre-beard. Stood in the rain for an hour to early vote today. When I got home, I filled in my stack of mail-in ballots and then voted the ballots of my deceased parents and grandparents. They vote just like me. Now, that's a joke. Obviously a joke.
But what he's trying to convey there is that people do this.
That's right. It's satire because why do I have a stack of ballots in my house for dead people?
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And someone could obviously do this. And they deleted that. They censored that. Wow. They squelched that. The federal government under President Trump did that. It's 5:22.
Making sense of your world.
I can't believe this.
News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
And I am so with you.
Making sense of the news.
One other part of this story that needs to be told, and I just want to really hit home what happened here in this report, and we look forward to Chairman Jordan then taking this and running with it in some sort of repercussions against the executive branch. During this exact same time when people are being censored over election interference and election quote-unquote disinformation, any person or any publication that put out on social media that the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian propaganda and was a result of a Russian disinformation operation, their communications were left alone. They were pristine. Yeah. They were supported. They were endorsed because that was the government's line. Yep. That was the government. So this is a perfect example of what is truth and what is not. The Hunter Biden laptop story was legitimate. It was fact. It was true. And it got deleted and censored because the government deemed that it wasn't true.
Right.
Calling the Hunter Biden laptop story Russian propaganda, that was the official government line, even though that was a lie, and that was fine. And this is the danger. This is the existential danger to our constitutional republic.
And if you think that laptop wouldn't have, if people had had a full reading, a full understanding of what that laptop contained, as Miranda Devine beautifully laid out in her book, if that information had been available to people on a wider scale, it absolutely would have changed people.
They interfered with the election. Bottom line, the government, the federal government interfered
Yes.
with the election, and we're sort of, by talking about it now, we're keeping it hopefully from happening again because they would love to do it again, and it's clear that this is what happened, and it's clear that they're on the wrong side of history and the wrong side of the freedoms that we enjoy and embrace here in the United States of America. You're 100% right, Julie. And it's again, thankfully, we have a majority in the House of Representatives so that we can actually investigate and get this out, because it would be sequestered.
Yes, and I don't mean to be an Eeyore, but it after the Durham report, after so many reports we've seen, when's someone going to pay a price, Larry? When are there going to be firings, arrests, conviction? I just, hard not to be a little frustrated.
It's 5:30. Hey, speaking of censorship, we're going to talk about the Nashville shooter's manifesto, that mass murderer in Nashville. The manifesto's out, not because any reporters, because someone who would have been censored by this group actually put it out. Stephen Crowder will tell you about it next.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station.
Making sense of the news.
News Talk 105.9.
News now.
On News Talk 105.9 WMAL.
O'Connor and Company.
5:36 on this election day in your nation's capital for all of our friends in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We got you covered there at 6:05. Laura Hanford about what's really at stake here in this election. 7:05. Steve Notch, chairman of the Republican Party in Fairfax. 7:35. The governor of the Commonwealth, Glenn Youngkin. 8:05. Rich Anderson, chairman of the Commonwealth's Republican Party. 8:15. Ian Pryor out of Loudoun County about the Loudoun School Board election. And at 8:35, Jason Miyares, the Attorney General of Virginia. You ready, Julie Gunlock?
I am.
It's
what
like
a great lineup.
The whole royalty of your state is here lined up.
That's right.
For today's program. I am Larry O'Connor. That is Julie Gunlock. So the Nashville mass shooting at the Covenant Christian School, you remember, was carried out by a young woman who was obviously mentally deranged and infested with evil.
And hate.
And was identifying as a boy at the time named Aiden. Mm-hmm. And she, there was an obvious targeting of this Christian school.
Yeah.
That was, and she had previously gone to that school.
Mm-hmm.
And it appeared as though there was a specific focused target on the Covenant Christian School. And there was a lot of speculation. We knew that there was a manifesto. It had been hushed up and sequestered and censored because it was deemed that this is information that you, the American people, couldn't be trusted with. Now, I believe I have two different opinions about this. I believe that anytime there is a mass shooting, we, the people, deserve all of the information about it so that we can reach our own conclusion. We deserve to know why innocent people are slaughtered. Right? If there is a reason known. Let me be clear. Sometimes you don't know that reason. Sometimes it is a mystery. You don't know. But if the government And their officials in the police department or prosecutor's office, if they have that information, then we deserve to have that information. Yes. They're not allowed to keep information from us as if they're protecting us from knowing the motive of a mass shooting. And they knew this motive, and they were keeping it from us. Although when I said I'm of two minds about this, I am loath to have the mass media go balls to the walls with this, because they exploit it.
Yes. Yeah.
And I think that it when you use this information and then publicize it and create all of this media hoopla around it, you're actually encouraging and inspiring other people to get that kind of attention. So I think we should be able to access the information ourselves, but and again, there's no pristine solution. Let me put it this way. I don't think there should be a law, but I wish the media were better.
Yeah.
Because they will take it and they will exploit this information and inspire other murderers. All right. But that said, the people fault on the side of getting information out if you're going to make a decision. Do you know what I mean?
No, I agree. And I look, we knew so little about this mass shooting. Yeah. So little was dripped out. And it bothered me from the beginning, because we knew, one of the few things that we knew was that this girl had apparently identified as a transgender person.
Right.
And right there, she got the protections of the media. Yep. I knew that the victims were white, and right there we got
Christian.
We got suddenly a media that wasn't interested.
That's right.
And all of that bothered me. And ultimately, it's all kind of proven true.
Yeah. If it were a school that catered to transgender individuals of color, and the murderer was a young white male with a history of conservative thought and conservative speech, this would have already been released.
Oh, absolutely.
We would have already known that manifesto. Well, after months of litigation of news outlets suing the city of Nashville and the Nashville Police Department, trying to wrestle this thing from them, and it was always deemed in the public's interest by the government's decision that it would not be released, some pages of the manifesto have been released. It's done in this murderer's handwriting on a spiral notebook, and photographs of certain pages of the manifesto were leaked to conservative commentator Steven Crowder. He has a almost daily video show that he does, mostly on Rumble. I think it's on YouTube, but he's been demonetized over the years. He wants the reason I'm saying on Rumble is because that's where he wants you to watch him.
Yeah.
He got it from an inside source that appears within the police department, because as of now, the Metropolitan Nashville Police Department is investigating the origins of this, and that's tantamount to being a confirmation.
Yeah.
That this
I love that they're going to do a ton. They're going to put a lot of, and some representatives from Tennessee have also said, there needs to be an investigation. Right. They're all going to get worked up about the leak and put tons of money and investigation time into it, into the leak. If only they'd been this concerned about the actual shooting.
Yeah, exactly. Well, some of the things in there suggest that there was definitely a bias, obviously, and this was a hate-filled attack.
Hatred
of white people. White people. It wasn't necessarily a trans issue. It was, this person has been fed the poison of critical race theory.
Yes.
And has decided, after years of indoctrination from the likes of Ibram X. Kendi and the champions of critical race theory, that white people deserve to die.
That's right.
And she acted out on that. Things like, want to kill all you little crackers. I hope I have a high death count. I'm ready. I hope my victims aren't.
She also believed in this idea that white people inherently have privilege.
Yeah.
Because she said these, children with their BMW, their daddy's BMW, and it was wicked what she included. She hated white people, what she perceived as white people privilege. And look, walk on a campus. You guys doubt this? This is normal stuff on a campus. This is taught to kids.
They're taught. And I saw Chaya Raichik at Libs of TikTok put out a beautiful compilation of the kind of things that have been said about white people by professors and experts and people in the media.
White people need to personally give all their money to black people. Some white people may have to die.
Right.
These are, I'm just reading. White masculinity is a problem for America's colleges.
Wait, is this from the manifesto?
No. This is this is from the compilation that you
Exactly.
just talked about.
Exactly.
But there's almost
it's
no
not
difference.
It's not from the manifesto of a mass murderer, but it sounds like it could be.
Yes.
Instead, it's from the intellectual class.
That's right.
Saying that white people are inherently mass murderers.
Yes. And that they need to die.
Yeah. So that's the manifesto. And now, as you said, there's going to be a big investigation into it as to how it got leaked. And there have been some statements out there saying, well, these few pages don't represent the entirety of the manifesto. And the only answer to that is then release the whole thing. Trust the American people with truth.
You need to also connect this to the rallies, the pro-Hamas rallies, because the Palestine rallies, the pro-Hamas rallies, they always connect it to colonial times and colonizing.
It's so funny you should bring up the mindset of those on college campuses who were marching on behalf of Palestine, free Palestine, and how it's all part of the same critical theory. Like you always root for the oppressed versus the oppressor, right? Because we've got more news out of Israel right now, but more importantly, the thought process here in America and how it's more than ever, sadly, still a minority, but a growing minority seems to be sympathetic to the terrorist cause. And they're right within the Biden administration.
Yeah.
According to the Washington Free Beacon, the Biden administration was planning on selling a bunch of weapons to Israel, to Benjamin Netanyahu, and allowing the sale to go through for their self-defense. But then they put a caveat. There was a big holdup because it was understood that the Netanyahu government was going to take some of those weapons and allow their citizens to have access to those guns to defend themselves so that when the next group of Hamas terrorists came paratrooping in, they could actually fight back and shoot. And the Biden administration was holding up the transaction. And they wanted to put a rule in that prohibited the Israeli government from arming their citizens.
Unbelievable. See, they can't do it here.
Right.
But they'll do it there in a place where people were defenseless on this board. And I mean, I think we've examined this, and many have examined sort of Israelis' own gun laws, which rendered a lot of these people defenseless. But it is just shocking to me, shockingly cruel.
It is incredibly cruel. And by the way, it was specific, and they specifically said if there are any Israelis living in the West Bank, which is part of the under control of Palestine, part control of the Palestinian Authority, they didn't want any of them to be able to defend themselves, as if the Israelis were going
to then. Which is where Hezbollah is, which is basically
tons. There's tons of different terrorist groups that are infiltrated in that area, and they coordinate with Hamas and Hezbollah, and as if the Israeli citizens were going to then storm into Palestinian homes and kill innocent Palestinians, which has literally never happened.
Right.
It's so obviously for defense purposes. More so, that's over in the White House, right? In the State Department, an employee has accused Joe Biden of being complicit in Israel's genocide of the Palestinian people.
Boy.
This is an official who works on Mideast issue. And
DC's bureaucratic class is truly gross.
Sylvia Yaqub, a career Foreign Service officer who works on Middle East issues, outspoken on X, formerly Twitter, using the platform to bash Joe Biden and say that the president is complicit. This is from Adam Credo, who did the reporting over at Washington Free Beacon as well. And meanwhile, you remember Joe Biden and Kamala Harris put out their Commission on Islamophobia last week because of all of the grave concerns. Well, the Commission on Islamophobia did not stop a pro-Palestinian protester from hitting an elderly Jewish man in the head with a megaphone. He has died in the hospital due to a brain hemorrhage. The elderly Jewish man was holding an Israeli flag at a peaceful protest when the pro-Palestinian monster came up and hit him in the head.
You want to know how NBC reported on this?
Oh, yeah,
elderly
please.
Jewish man dies after hitting his head at a rally. He was murdered. He was hit on the head.
So the elderly Jewish man, according to NBC News, took his head and slammed it into the megaphone.
Yes.
Causing his death.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there you go.
Disgusting.